Any form of dissatisfaction is showing you there's something wrong with maybe a person within your business at times. I mean, that's not unheard of. I've worked in businesses where there's a particular person that's quite prickly and customers just can't gel with that person, and that person actually needs to be removed from that role.
Welcome back to the Master Your Business podcast. Today, I interview Karl Sandland, an accredited confidence and self-belief coach, empowering customer-focused leaders to transform their career and life with unshakable self-belief. Karl's work and home life completely changed when he worked as a coach, and that ignited a passion in him to become a coach to help customer-focused leaders. He knows about your struggles as he's lived through them himself. He's been controlled by them and, more importantly, found a way around them. So if you'd like some guidance on how to change your mindset to overcome limiting beliefs and become the customer-focused leader that you want to be and maybe never even thought possible, this episode is for you. I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to the show today, Karl. Thanks so much for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners today?
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. My name's Karl Sandland. I'm the Chief Experience Officer for Bright CX Limited.
Fantastic, Karl. And where in the world are you based?
Well, the company is registered in London, but I'm actually sitting at the moment at my home office in lovely, sunny, well, rainy Manchester.
Fantastic, beautiful part of the world. And so, Karl, tell us about Bright CX and what you do.
So, Bright CX, there's a few things that we do. I mean, ultimately, our mantra, I suppose, is helping businesses to give customers the experiences that they need, deserve, and are going to remember, because then they're going to come back. You're going to get that repeat business, and it's creating those memorable experiences by helping businesses to look at what they're doing, why they're doing things, what's going wrong, and particularly focused, I guess, on complaints, which is a bit of a passion of mine, looking at handling complaints better.
I think that is a rare passion, Karl, might I say.
I spent a couple of decades dealing with complaints. So yeah, it's an odd passion, but it's a passion. Look, everybody needs a passion, don't they?
Absolutely. And so I really would like to talk to you a lot about complaints today on the show, because I think, a lot of people listening, they're new business owners, and maybe perhaps in previous roles that they've experienced complaints. But when it's in your own business, it feels like a personal attack, because, if you do something wrong in your own business and somebody complains, it's like somebody said your baby is ugly. It's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. So, advice or suggestions do you have for new coaches, entrepreneurs, or small business owners when they get a complaint in their business?
It's, oh God, there's a few different ways to attack that, really. I guess the first point is that you're right. A lot of businesses don't like complaints. And I think there needs to be a bit more of a mind shift in there, whereby it's like, don't run away from them. Don't be afraid of them. Somebody isn't personally attacking you, as you said. Somebody isn't saying your child's ugly. What they're saying is they've had a problem with something. And actually they're asking for your help. Then they're not saying you're rubbish, your business is no good at this. They're just trying to solve a problem that they have. And I think, so that's the first thing. I think people need to have a bit of a mind shift change. And I think we also need to do is make sure that the people that are handling complaints certainly are empathetic and have got some of the additional soft skills, which I think a lot of businesses now have forgotten about. Certainly with COVID, we seem to have hardened up. We seem to have turned our empathy filter off completely. And it's okay to send cold emails about, sorry that didn't work out for you. And another thing of mine, a real hatred of mine, is when people say, sorry, but, or sorry, and it's like, that's not an apology. In fact, what I'd like to promote really is that people thank complainers. It's like, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'm going to solve your problem, obviously, but I really appreciate you telling me about this problem you're going to have, because I can guarantee there's probably another, X number of people, a couple of other dozen people having this problem. So I know I've got a lot on there about a mindset thing, but I think it's so important. People should want complaints, not want the problems, but invite complaints in so that they can delight people and solve the problems that the root causes.
I love that. And oh, I completely agree with you about the language as well. That's something, for years when my team, we would have been dealing with clients and where they had to wait to, be served in the bank when I worked in the bank. Sometimes people waited for 30 or 40 minutes to be served when it was really busy. And so, one of the things that we tried to do was to shift everybody's language. So instead of saying sorry for keeping you, it was thank you for waiting. So just
Yeah.
something as simple as that, it's like an acknowledgement and it starts off the next part of the conversation more positively, doesn't it?
It absolutely, yeah, and linking it to something that you've experienced as well. I mean, even if you didn't flip that language and you still said, "I'm sorry you've had to wait," but then following it up with something like, "I hate having to wait, and I really understand why you're probably frustrated right now, but let me help you with X, Y, Z."
Mm.
Those sort of things, those relatable bits. I mean, we're all humans, right? We just want to be dealt with as humans, and so do people who are complaining. They just want you to help them solve the problem. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's key.
Yeah. And what I found, because again, for years, I would have been engaging frontline with people. And, often what would have happened was when somebody complained, it was like, Deirdre, will you come and deal with this? And like, you'd be like, oh, the dread would just set in. You'd be like, oh God, what's wrong now? Are they going to shout at me? What, and all of these thoughts start to run through your mind. And I've got tips and suggestions that I give people when they ask me these questions, but I'd love to hear what yours are. What kind of tools or skills can people, dig for to help them in that sort of situation?
It is a tough one. And look, I've been in exactly the same situation. Early in my career, I used to hate having to deal with the escalated calls. It's like, oh God, please, why is it with me? But I actually enjoy it now. I mean, I don't have many complaints nowadays, but in recent years, I've managed teams, large call center teams, where there's been a significant number of complaints that came in. And one of the strategies that we had was we sort of personified the certain types of complainers. So we came up with a play with 5 different complaining personas. So there was, chronic complainer Carol, meek Michael, aggressive Annie, high roller Harry, and rip off Ronnie. You could guarantee that each type of person who complained would probably fit into these different personas. And the teams were trained with understanding things to say to them, things to avoid saying to them. And it actually, in a way, it's slightly wrong because you're turning a complaint into a bit of a game. In a way, it's like, oh, who can recognize who this sort of complainer is? But actually what it's doing is, in a fun way, in a gamified way, it's enabling the team to have the tools, the framework to deal with that particular type of complaint. And as long as you wrap that then with the framework that we had for how to deal with the complaints, wording that you should always avoid, things you should always do and say, along with those personas, it worked really well. So actually it got to the stage where the team I was working with actually enjoyed dealing with the complaints, because then they would feed that into the business improvement team. They wouldn't take complaints personally anymore. They would handle them and then deal with the outcomes and the root causes. So that's sort of like my tip, and that's actually one of the things that we cover into our training, our masterclass training. It's that, how can you shift the focus, the mindset, into using a framework and that's perhaps a little bit more fun and gets the looks at the root cause and gets a different outcome.
I love those personas. I think it's a nice way to look at complaints. And it is a nice way to look at complaints because no matter what industry or sector, they're probably the same 5 personas, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Everybody has met a chronic complainer, Carol. Everybody has probably dealt with a rip-off Ronnie who, no matter what you say, their outcome is to get something for free, probably when they're not even deserving of it. And to be honest, they've probably not even had a problem with your product or service. They're just ringing to try it on.
Mm.
I can guarantee that most people have met these 5 personas if they've dealt with complaints.
What I'd love to know is you mentioned there as you were talking about language that they absolutely must avoid and things that they should say as well. Can you give us some examples of those that maybe listeners could take and just be mindful of for their own businesses?
Yeah, I guess the key thing is trying to turn, even if you're trying to deliver a no or a negative message, you have to try and spin it and deliver it in a positive way.
Mm.
So, if somebody's asking for something that is just out there and you think in your mind, you're thinking, no, you can't have that. You're not having that. We're not doing that for you. It's not a no. You can't say no. What you've got to say is, let me have a look at this. What about this instead? It's the flipping the negative into a positive instead. And there's numerous examples, but But I guess tied to that, it's more about that. How do you make somebody feel about how serious that you're looking at this? So there's a really good example I think Simon Sinek used. He was getting a flight back, I think, and he knew he'd booked a particular flight time, and it was one of these tickets that you can't change, but he finished his conference a day early, and he was trying to get a flight. He was trying to change his tickets time and so that he could get an early flight back. And he knew that he wouldn't be able to do it. And he clearly knew that the person dealing with him wasn't going to be able to change it. But he then went on to explain how the person said, "Oh, let me just try this. Oh, no, that's not worked. Sorry, Mr. Sinek. Let me just speak to my supervisor. Let me see if we can override this. Let me look in this system. Well, hang on a minute. Let me go and try this." It's giving the person you're dealing with that real confidence that you are literally pulling out all the stops to try and make this happen for you. And even if at the end of it, the outcome is still, "Look, I'm really sorry. I can't do that for you. I can't change your flight." The outcome's the same, but the journey that you've taken them on is such a much more empathetic and understanding journey. And in fact, if I'd gone through that process and I'd grown up to complain, I'd be thinking this company's great. I'd be thinking that person's fantastic. They tried absolutely everything. So they've not taken my complaint away, they've not solved it, but I know that they actually care about me. And that's the key thing, isn't it? Safety, trust, care. They're the key things that people look for.
Absolutely. And I love what you said at the start as well. A Bright Start CX creates experiences that people need, deserve, and remember, because handling a complaint effectively and really turning it around is a positive experience that people remember, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people forget that. I mean, and again, going back to the outcome, it's not always the outcome that the customer wants, it's the journey you take them on. But yes, complaints really at times can be ideal opportunities to wow people. If you have, quite often in your business, you'll have lots of customers that you may have like an engagement with every so often when they're purchasing, or you have follow-up meetings with them, but you may go through and the relationship might be quite mediocre. Whereas some of your customers are a little bit more volatile and might complain a little bit more. I can guarantee you've probably got a better relationship with them because you're eliciting some sort of emotion with them, even if they're unhappy with things and you're putting that right. The overall net benefit is that there's a better relationship there.
Absolutely. Karl, a lot of the listeners here are small business owners, or coaches, or entrepreneurs. So some of them will have multiple clients and others will maybe just have two or three. So if they get a complaint in, aside from, the conversation that they have with that potential client, what kind of things can they do to help with the resolution process and to make sure these kinds of complaints don't come up again in the future?
Well, I think that the key thing, and I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head a little bit there, really, it's the end piece, isn't it? Look, the resolving the complaint, there's like an 8-step framework for how you listen, you give them their airtime, you apologize, and so on and so on. And then you resolve the complaint. But I guess the key thing is it doesn't stop there. Resolving the complaint is resolving the complaint for that customer. And you can guarantee, statistics show that there's probably about another 25, 26 customers feeling that same pain. They just haven't complained because there's only about 4% of people do actually complain. So actually what you need to then do is look at the root cause of that problem. And that's what I work with businesses to do as well. Within our Customer First Academy, we look at not just solving the complaint, but then what do you do with that? What was the root cause? What was the thing causing the pain, causing the friction? How do we then engineer something that's slightly different in the customer journey to avoid that, or to be proactive when those particular things happen? And then how do we get return on investments around that illustrated, so that then we can go to the leads of the business and say, right, well, if you fix these problems, you're probably going to stop about 30 complaints coming in this month. And then of course they see the value of that, and then that can be implemented in. So yeah, it's that extra bit at the end. And I know for small businesses that might seem, oh, well, that's a big thing, that's a big corporate thing. But if you can apply the same principles of just understanding that resolving a complaint doesn't stop once the customer's happy, it's actually, it goes beyond that. And what do you do to stop that happening again?
I could not agree with you more. And I speak about this as well with my clients too, because we talk about the emotion that you experience when that complaint comes in, and there's an emotional cost to you as a business owner when that happens, because it can really affect your mindset when that complaint comes in, because you think, oh, I'm not good enough, and the inner critic goes wild. But sometimes then what happens is if you don't put a resolution process in place at that time and the emotion fades, the same thing is going to happen again at some point in the future because there's no system or process in place. So yeah, completely agree with what you're saying there. And Karl, you've mentioned your masterclass a couple of times on the call, and a lot of the people who are listening, they're solopreneurs, they're maybe coaches, entrepreneurs, or small business owners. They might work completely on their own, or perhaps they have a few people on their teams, and they may take calls, but they mightn't be on the phone all day. Is your masterclass suitable for them, or who's it for?
The masterclass really is suitable for anybody who may end up in a position where they're taking a complaint from somebody or managing people taking complaints. Mm-hmm. So that could be, you could be the CEO of a small business. You could be in a partnership and there's just a few of you. You could be a team lead who's got a team of 20 in a call center. You could be one of those people who are sitting on the front line taking calls. It's for anybody who needs to really understand, I guess, emotionally and technically how to deal with somebody who in some cases might seem to be personally attacking you. What are the tools and tips that you need in order to deal with that and to stop that happening?
Karl, that sounds like something that every business owner should take 100%, because as I said at the start, it's a little bit like sometimes when somebody complains, it feels like a personal attack on you, and it's like they've said your baby's ugly. Really, that's what it feels like. It's not nice. And I mean, I think, I haven't really had a complaint per se, but, I've made mistakes that people have highlighted to me. And even though it's a mistake, it's an expression of dissatisfaction. And I suppose, that's something else that I like to highlight to people too, is that a complaint isn't always like, hello, Karl, may I please make a complaint? Sometimes complaints are the language that clients use is not that language. It's not like, hello, Karl, can I please make a complaint? So it's about listening for those expressions of dissatisfaction. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I totally agree. Look, any dissatisfaction expressed should be treated as a complaint. It's still some form of friction or dissatisfaction someone has. They're telling you because they want a resolution, and ultimately you want to stop that happening again for them and for others. That's a complaint, isn't it? The post I actually did, ironically, was talking about a company that I used to work for, where one of the senior team had decided we were getting too many complaints, and therefore we were going to redefine what a complaint was. So it wasn't just all dissatisfaction. It was if the dissatisfaction was criteria A and criteria B, that was a complaint. Anything else was just the customer wasn't very happy. It's like, you've got that so wrong. That it's not going to work. So I agree. Any form of dissatisfaction is showing you there's something wrong with that part of the customer journey, or there's something wrong with maybe a person within your business at times. I mean, that's not unheard of. Before now, I've worked in businesses where it's actually that there's a particular person quite prickly and customers just can't gel with that person, and that person actually needs to be removed from that frontline role.
Yeah, that's a lovely description of them. Prickly.
Prickly, yeah, prickly. You don't want to pick a hedgehog up, do you? I mean, you don't want to deal with picking a hedgehog up, and that's sometimes what people are like.
Karl, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been fantastic chatting with you and hearing somebody talk about complaints and expressions of dissatisfaction in such a positive way, and knowing, I think for people listening, knowing there is a process that you can implement that can help you resolve those complaints, handle them better, and turn those complainers into loyal client relationships, right?
Absolutely. And look, it's been fantastic. Thank you for letting me come on, and I'll step off my soapbox now. But as you can see, I'm quite passionate about complaints. I really do think that people think about them as being that horrible relative you don't want to deal with, you don't want to see. Far from it. They should be. We should open up the floodgates to our complaints and deal with them and think about them in a different way. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that.
I love it. And Karl, I'm going to take all of your details and share them in the show notes so people can follow you, connect with you, and check out your masterclass. Thank you for listening to today's episode.